r/AskReddit. What movie really changed an actor's career? Al Pacino in Godfather. Producers wanted him out, and Coppola shot the restaurant scene a long time before it was actually planned in order to convince them. The Godfather saga was ground zero for a lot of actors' careers. It helped launch Diane Keaton, Robert Duvall, and John Cazale, who only appeared in 5 films before dying of cancer, all have the distinction of being Best Picture nominees/winners. Godfather 2 established De Niro as a leading man and got him the main part in Taxi Driver, since Scorsese originally wanted Harvey Keitel to star. It helped reintroduce Marlon Brando to a whole new audience who thought of him as a washed-up 50s star. James Caan didn't reach the same heights as the others, but it helped him out too. Coppola freaking nailed it with the casting. I can't imagine anyone else but Pacino in the main role. Rocky for Sylvester Stallone. That movie single-handedly propelled his career. Fact I learned from die-hard Stallone fans. He sold his dog to get the script done, rose to fame, and bought the dog back. I heard that he got $30,000 for his script, and the first thing he did after receiving the money was to find his dog and buy him back at outrageous price, like $10,000 or something. Bruce Willis in Die Hard really opened up the door for him to finally take Hollywood by storm. He was being typecast before that happened, and it ultimately changed not only Willis's career, but how action movie heroes could be played in general. More everyman, less workout warrior. He was actually cast in Die Hard because he was such an unconventional, unobvious hero. The anti-tough guy to oppose Stallone and others. He's the vulnerable guy out of his element, thrust into a situation where he has to pull it together, improvise, and make it happen. Because of this, it's sort of funny how the franchise developed into him just being another untouchable, cut tough guy. The role was actually offered to the likes of Stallone and Schwarzenegger first, so that's not what the casting people were looking for. Probably big for Tom Hanks. He originally was a clown guy in a dress, straight man to set up the comic genius of a dog. Big had a lot of comedy element, but some really good dramatic stuff as well. Does some stuff that isn't as appreciated. Then he basically gets a string of just really well received movies. A League of Their Own, Philadelphia, Sleepless in Seattle, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, then the capstone of Toy Story. After that he's king of the everyman, America's Dad. I think all that was set up by Big. I'm thinking Saving Private Ryan should be on your list of well received movies. Comedy classic. Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover. Went from being a weird indie comic with a couple small roles in forgettable movies into a household name pretty much overnight. He was great in Out Cold. That's my motto. Well, that, and everybody Wang Chung tonight. Well, yeah, it doesn't really allow my dice to roll, and by dice I mean testicles. Speaking of testicles, let me get a beer. Christoph Waltz was unknown in Hollywood before appearing in Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. Now he's really famous. He deserves it too, since he was terrific, and he basically carried one of the greatest movie scenes I've ever seen. Fun fact, he literally carried IB, since Quentin was about to cancel the project altogether, because he cannot find anyone who can play Handa, as he is a multi-language genius, until he found Christoph Waltz. Hans Lander spoke English, French, German, and Italian. All Tarantino had to do was poke around Switzerland for a little bit really. Tim Curry in the film adaptation of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. When he played Frankenfurter in the Rocky Horror Show on Broadway, he was still relatively unknown. But this film not only defined his career, but also redefined the role of the villain in film. Of course, Frankenfurter wasn't a villain, but his portrayal of one of the protagonists redefined how major characters can interact with each other. TL. Dr. I love this man. He also came to hate that role, because it was so tightly associated with him. He couldn't get away from it. I always think of him in Clue. Communism is just a red herring. Chris Evans since Captain America. People often thought of him as immature playboy, Fantastic Four. First thing I saw him in was this action thriller called Cellular, where Jason Statham is the bad guy and William H. Massey is a cop. I was a kid when I saw it, but I liked it. It was about a woman getting kidnapped and, being some sort of college professor, I think, she clicked wires of a smashed landline phone together where she was being held, called a random number that way to seek help, and Chris Evans' character was the number she reached. He reluctantly goes on a chase to try and stop her kid from being kidnapped and found out there's a massive dirty cop situation the woman's husband knew about. Think drugs or illegal weapons were involved or something, I can't remember at all. So Evans saves her and her family, but not in a I'm very badass way. He was just some dude. Pretty decent movie, far as I remember. It was back in the early 2000s when cell phones went super mainstream. Wacky premise, but they made it work. There's funny to do too. Jeremy Renner and the Hurt Locker or The Town was doing quite well for himself off the back of SWAT. Not critically successful, but it did alright. Then he sort of just faded away doing CSI and House episodes. Renner filmed the CSI episode in 2001. He filmed SWAT in 2002, and he used the contract from the movie to take out a loan to buy a home. Then he ended up flipping homes for a living. He made more money from that than from acting, and was able to take roles he really wanted. He filmed the House episode when he got back from filming The Hurt Locker. I unironically love SWAT, and will always see Renner as that character. Was Pirates the movie that sent Johnny Depp down the road to being a meme of himself? Whatever it was, it's a shame, because he's truly a great actor, but he got way pigeonholed in the last decade. I feel like Part C was the turning point when he stopped giving a shit about which roles he wanted to play. As a young man, he got a taste of being a teenage heartthrob when he was on 21 Jump Street and decided he didn't like it. So he spent the chunk of his career between Jump Street and Pirates picking roles that went against the grain of the stereotypical Hollywood hunk, and as a result, he ended up with a lot of really interesting character roles. Part C, he claims he did so he could be in something his kids could watch, but he definitely started picking up a lot more mainstream roles after that, and he's definitely finally allowed himself to be typecast. Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther. His life went from "Hey that's the dude who played Jackie Robinson" to "OMFG T'Challa, Wakanda for the rap." I had no idea that was who played Jackie Robinson until right now, so that's valid. Great film, didn't realize that either. Most of the original Avengers, I would say, because they became the face of their character for like 10 years, and will mostly be remembered for their role in the MCU. They're gonna have a little struggle to separate themselves from those characters. I point RDJ as Iron Man and Chris Evans as Captain America. RDJ has an Oscar for Chaplin before the MCU, and some other commercial successes, Sherlock. I agree for nearly all the other actors, except Samuel L. Jackson, who also had a significant pre-MCU career. Same could be said of the people from the Harry Potter movies. But RDJ's career was also ducked before Iron Man due to his addiction problems. They took a chance on him for Iron Man and that completely saved his career. Sean Connery never wanted to act again after The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He turned down playing Gandalf in Lord of the Rings as he thought it was nonsense and was stunned when it was a huge hit. He then got the script for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, thought it sounded like similar nonsense to Lotta, and thus would also be a huge hit. When it bombed, he decided he just didn't understand the business anymore and that he should retire. Now it's a cult classic. Hated but liked. Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy. After his part as Star-Lord, the offers started rolling in, and he got to be a part of more blockbusters. I would say Andy Dwyer was a more important role. Before that, he was known mainly as being a pretty boy jock in Everwood, and getting the role of Andy really changed his life. He was able to show that he was funny, and even though he was supposed to be written off after the first season, he was so likable that Andy was written in as one of the main characters of the show, and became one of the fan favorites. I love that he improved a lot of his Parks and Recreation lines. He's basically playing himself in P&R and Guardians. Not that he can't act. I love Jurassic World too. Just a very talented and overwhelmingly likable guy. My biggest celeb crush. Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool, 100%. You gotta remember the dude always had the talent and charisma, but he was being shoved into a box and forced to become just another leading man. That's not who Ryan Reynolds is. Once he got the green light with his true version of Deadpool, it went on to gross $1 gazillion and the rest is history.